sense of life or death, good or evil, right or wrong. I met this 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face, the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. I spent 8 years trying to reach him, and then another 7 trying to keep him locked up because I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil.
Do you like Huey Lewis in the News? Because if you do, welcome back to Let's Talk Movies. I'm Brad. And you're muted, dude.
And guess what, guys? Do you guys like Phil Collins?
Miguel is more of a Phil Collins guy. Well, what
I'm
about
more
Whitney
of a Phil
Houston?
Collins.
What about Whitney Houston? You got
Whitney Houston is just underrated. Underrated as she'll all get out. So
Whitney Houston is underrated?
that's what he said at the time.
Well, I guess at the time, I don't know. Was she underrated?
I'm just spitting out lines now at this point. I by no means believe what the sociopath said.
Now that I know, right? Looking back, it's like, Whitney Houston's considered like the queen of pop. Like you have like Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston, and then you have Prince, and then who's
Tina Turner.
Is Tina Turner
Tina Turner's up there? Yep.
The princess of pop? Yeah, I don't know. But
what is pop? A monarchy? What the fuck?
I don't know. On episode number 14 of Purely and Simply Evil, we are taking a deep dive into American Psycho. We are going to look into the psyche, deep into that shit.
No, we're not. We're just going to talk about the fucked up shit that goes on in this movie. And then,
Well, here's the thing. This is going to be more of like a character study, honestly. Like a lot of, even a lot of the interviews I found with Brett Ellis, who wrote the novel, if you don't know, American Psycho is based on a novel of the same name. A lot of the interviews are very much like everything that happens. I think it was written very much from a perspective of Patrick Bateman's psyche. Like every single event in the movie is basically you get another little piece. It's like you have this story about this wealthy banker, and it's almost, at the beginning, you get the little tidbit where it just kind of like slaps you in the face when he gives her the 2 drink tickets at the bar, and she's like, "We don't accept them anymore. What do you?" And he tells her what drink he wants, and then she turns around and you see him in the mirror, and he's like, "I want to stab you to death and then play in your blood, you stupid bitch," or whatever he says. And it's like,
God damn.
Like whoa, where do we come
from?
And
I was wondering, and I have a couple of theories in regards to like when certain moments start and when certain moment ends in regards to his psyche and his complete spiral down the rabbit hole of his own mind.
Yeah, I agree with that. So before we get into it, Miguel, my friend, what you drinking?
I am drinking, my man, the most basic ass beer you could think of, Miller Lite, because even though if I'm gonna drink beer, I like to lose some weight.
There's nothing wrong with drinking a Miller Lite. I like Miller High Life. There's nothing wrong. I had a couple of them in my fridge. We went camping a couple last week, like a week ago.
And you brought Miller Lite?
I took a couple of Miller High Lifes, yeah.
Oh, Miller High Life. Okay, I got you.
Yeah,
so
it's a decent beer.
He'll spend an extra couple of cents on
I will.
Mediocrity.
I go all out. Yes. No, I'm having one of those blackberry ale 8s with some Evan Williams in it. I know it's Evan Williams. It's not like great whiskey, or bourbon, but we didn't have a big selection. I've seen one thing I've wanted to try with this is you take, I think it's 2 ounces of the blackberry ale 8 plus, a bottle of the blackberry ale 8, 2 ounces of whatever bourbon, but you also take mint and fresh blackberries and muddle it at the bottom with some simple syrup, and it's supposed to be great. So I really want to try
for the new L8 blackberry.
Yeah, have you had the blackberry L8?
I have. I've had it. It's pretty good.
It's good. I like it. I like it way better than.
It's just a blueberry soda in my eyes.
Well, I'm not really super big. Kentucky people don't kill me. I'm not super big on normal L8. Like every once in a while I can drink one, but Julia loves it.
Yeah, I could drink it all the time.
Yeah, I'm not that big of a. When it comes to soda, really the only soda I drink is Coke and Pepsi, and I've branched out a little bit because I really like that Coke Starlight that nobody can place a flavor on. That like limited edition thing. It says like tastes like space or something like that. And
Coke
I like
Starlight?
that.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, it's new. I get I've seen some people say cotton candy. I've seen some people say like the red, white, and blue popsicle. Like it just says tastes like space. It's pretty ambiguous.
When did this come out? This had been like This had been like 6 hours ago because I had never seen this before in my life.
It's been a couple of months.
I have never seen that before in my life. So
yeah, well, I really like the normal one, but I got the I went traveling with my parents a couple weeks ago to go see some family, and we were in BFE, Georgia, like literally middle of nowhere, Georgia, and there was a dollar store there, so we pull in the dollar store, and I left, and I was like, crap, all they have is like the Coke Zero version of it, which Coke Zero is fine on its own, but the Coke Zero Starlight, I was like, it was not good. It was not very good. And then the Pepsi.
You want me to give you the rundown? You want me to give you a rundown of what the flavor is?
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, give it to me.
Looked it up.
Give it to me, Earl. No, but it's like, I don't know.
It says, according to Eater, astronomers discovered a dust cloud in the Milky Way made up of ethanol formate, the same chemical that gives raspberries their flavor. So it's really just raspberry.
There's more to it than raspberry, though.
I'm going to say it's just raspberry.
There's more to it than raspberry. It's very strange.
Yeah, sugar.
Nobody's been syrup. Nobody's been able to place a flavor on it yet, but I mean, it's interesting. It's different. Also, have you tried we're supposed to be talking about a serial killer on a movie, and we're talking about soda, or pop, as y'all like to call it.
You like Coca-Cola Starlight?
You like Pepsi Nitro? Have you had Pepsi Nitro yet?
I have.
Do you like it?
It's just flat. It's just flat Pepsi. I don't know what.
No, it's not flat Pepsi. It's different. It's like consistency of a beer. Like it even
it's
says
like
on
flat
the can,
Pepsi. It's flat
like,
Pepsi that literally someone put in like some fucking milk in there, and that's pretty much it to give it a creamy flavor, or some creamer of something. So yeah, it's also nothing new. I prefer if I'm gonna drink something like that, like a Nitro. Why not just get a fucking Guinness? And it says you can't drink it out of the can. You got to put it in a glass. But when am I ever gonna if I'm on the road and I'm at a Speedway, which shout out to Speedway, and if I want like a Pepsi Nitro, bro, I'm not gonna carry a glass so I can drink it. No, I just want to drink it out of the can. But they say don't drink it out of the can. It's better. It says on the can. It says it's better in a glass. But yeah, sure. If I'm ever at a Meyer, shout out to Meyer. If I'm ever there, just fine, I'll buy one. I don't care. But in other words, you're not gonna find me buying a Pepsi Nitro. Shout out to Pepsi.
Yeah. I don't know. I get it. Yeah, I'm always down to figure out what I can mix a drink with. What can I get in these kicks of I want to try new cocktails and stuff. And I'm.
Have you tried cyanide?
Yes, it's great.
Okay.
I love it.
A little bit of a kick, a little bit of a bite.
A little bit of a kick. It's got. We're kidding, by the way. So let's talk American Psycho, man. So as I said in our commentary, it's interesting that we're moving from a horror comedy with an American Werewolf in London, which we just did with Frank and Darren of the Slaughtered and Lamb Movie Podcast. Shout out to you, awesome dudes. We shifted to another horror comedy, but we didn't necessarily mean to. Because the focus of this season was to the focus of the season. I know the focus of this season was to take a deep dive into the Elm Street franchise, which we are going to be doing next. I promise next episode we'll hop back into Elm Street and we'll stay on Elm Street for a little while. But even though you could consider these as both horror comedies, An American Werewolf in London and American Psycho both have comedic elements, but they're different in ways too. They're both very visceral at times. Although honestly, I think you could argue that American Werewolf in London has more violence and more gore than this really has. This doesn't. This is more. This kind of creatively leaves things up to the imagination in terms of the way Patrick Bateman kills people, the deaths. This leaves a lot up to the imagination, you know. It's kind of interesting that we're kind of making that shift. Although, wouldn't you agree that this one's a little more satirical though than American Werewolf?
I would say American Werewolf in London and American Psycho are pretty much just satires of some sort of horror element or something like that, or something based in reality, or at that time of place, like, you know, at some point in somebody's lives. So, but I would agree with you. The gore aspect between the two, American Werewolf in London by far does have more gore.
Yeah,
and I think the fact that American Psycho, the gore was pretty much left up to like your imagination, or just kind of like left up in the air, kind of gave it a little bit more. It did so in service of the story, if that makes sense. In my eyes, the neglect of the amount of gore in these scenes was to help further the story of what Patrick Bateman was going through. So,
well, it's almost it's the famous Dave McRae thing. If you watch his channel, Theater of the Mind, it's like what you don't see that is the cool thing. That's what made the original Halloween so great, you know. And this is the thing about American Psycho 2 is it's extremely hardcore. Like, it's very extreme. It's very taboo in how it tells the story. It's very everything. It's not just making, you know, an American Werewolf in London. The comedy is there just to be comedy. This movie is trying to make a statement about the many different issues. I mean, feminism, there's violence against the Asian community. There's violence in general. There's this whole not communism, consumerism and money and what
both
communism.
Polar different.
I know, right? I know. They both start with com though. But it's just very interesting. Like it's very. Like I said, it's extreme. It's not, you know, I showed Julia this movie last year or a year or two ago, and I figured she'd like it because she's a reader. She likes things that are based on novels. And she actually got up and left halfway through. We were watching it and she was like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life. And I was like, what? It's at that point when Christian Bale is sitting there and he's having the threesome with the chicks and he looks at the camera and he goes, it's at that point, and she was like, "I'm leaving. Goodbye."
Which, by the way, I gotta say, guys, do you know how hard it is to make a commentary when that scene comes on? It's like I don't know what to fucking say in that regard. I don't even remember what I said.
Go get him, buddy.
I probably said something like, "How like what?"
I said, "Go get him, buddy. Go get him, buddy."
Oh my god. I probably said something along the lines of like, bro, how like fucking self-centered are you that you're just gonna flex while you're having, like, you literally have 2 women on top of you and you're just flexing yourself in the mirror. It's like, bro, how self-centered sociopaths are you to just do that? I don't know. But one thing I would say though, you did ruin the opportunity for me and Sarah to watch it, because I actually really wanted her to see this and I wanted to see like how far she would get into the movie. But your guys' like preface of this movie, and I was like, "Hey, hon, do you want to go watch this movie now?" And she was like, "I'm good. I don't want to." And I was like, "Come on,
I think it's good. Listen, Sierra, give it a shot. At least give it a shot. Listen, it's actually pretty feminist and pretty. It's actually, there's a lot of.
It's really not
like it. No, but it's because it's so extreme. Like, that's the thing. It's making a statement by how extreme it is, you know. That's how I see it. And honestly, I pulled a couple of quotes from interviews with the director and the writer, and I think we'll kind of expand on that in just a few minutes. But I have to acknowledge the fact that J-Dad is in the house. What's going on, man? Nice to see you here. I like doing these night shows. Honestly, I feel like more people can hang out on night shows, which I dig. So this was first shown at the Sundance Film Festival in January of 2000, but it had its actual theatrical release on April 14th. It was directed by a woman director, Mary Harron, and it was written by 2 women. It was written by Mary. The screenplay was written by Mary Harron and Guinevere Turner. Again, based on what?
They went against one of their own. They went against their own. Can you believe that? They made a movie about that.
To make a statement.
Make a
Make a statement. For the sake of art. You know, the other reason this movie is so well done is because of its stacked cast. And make no mistake, it's got a stacked cast. I mean, you have Christian Bale as the lead, which we're going to talk about that in just a minute. They did not want Christian Bale. The studio was like, no, like they did not want him to do this. You had Willem Dafoe as the detective. You had Jared Leto. It's Morbin time. You had Samantha Mathis, who actually played. I told Miguel this on our commentary. Samantha Mathis played Frank Castle's wife in Tom Jane and John Travolta's Punisher film from 2004. And then you also even have Reese Witherspoon, who doesn't have a huge role. Josh Lucas, who was in A Beautiful Mind. He was also the dickhead general in Hulk in Eric Bana's Hulk movie. I mean, the cast is pretty stacked, wouldn't you say? It's got a good group of people in it.
You forgot to mention Justin Theroux, man.
Oh yeah, and Justin Theroux's in it. It's good. Yeah. Man, it really does. It's got a lot of good people, and it blows my mind. I'm gonna drink here. It blows my mind that they didn't want Christian Bale, because it's like, dude, Christian Bale freaking annihilated this role. Like he knocked it out of the damn park, in a way that I don't know that a lot of people could have.
And one thing that really surprised me with this cast was, like, this was the start of like a lot of people's, like, the amount of people that I know in the movie like industry that like have like are pretty like well known. That had a small role in this movie. What the fuck did I just say, guys?
Nevertheless, it was not me this time. It was not me that screwed up.
Got me right there. But you know who I'm talking about. The hobo on the side of the street, Reggie Cathy. Yeah. The one I think it was Patrick Bateman's first victim that we saw, at least.
Yeah, the guy that he acted like he was being nice to him, and then he,
up and like shanked the hell out of him. Which he was in a lot of great movies. Like, I mean, I remember him from like The Mask, The Wire. If you guys haven't checked out The Wire, go check that out. He was also in House of Cards. Luke Cage. He's in a lot of good movies. So like, and for him to have such a small moment in the movie, it just really astounds me, like how old this movie is. You know what I mean? Like like most of these actors, like even Willem Dafoe, him playing just a detective, and even though he did have a decent amount of lines, his role was still pretty small. Like we didn't get to see much of his character develop. He was just there to continue to perpetuate Christian Bale's Patrick Bateman.
Yes. And J-Ded, your comment here, J-Ded says that this movie has so many layers the more I rewatch it. I'm convinced now he never killed anybody. It was all a psychotic break he experienced. And I'm glad you say that, because I was actually getting ready to say, you had mentioned Willem Dafoe's character with the detective. It's not even just Patrick Bateman who has layers here. Onions have layers. But, even Willem Dafoe, like, they purposely shot his, like, different takes of his scenes and told him, that was a terrible burp, and told him to act different ways. Like one time they told him, hey, act like you're on to Patrick Bateman, like he was a serial killer. And then in another take, act like, oh, you don't know, like you're just talking to him as a witness, like he doesn't believe it's him at all. And then in another take, act like, oh, you're kind of on the fence, like he may have done it, but I also am not sure. And they edited bits and pieces of the three of those together. So even Willem Dafoe's performance has different layers, to the point where as an audience member, you're like, is he onto him? Like, does he have evidence that we don't know about? Are the questions that he's asking Patrick Bateman
leading him?
Yeah, like trying to lead him on and get him to say something that he shouldn't. So you're exactly right about the layers of this thing. Had a budget of $7 million, grossed just under $34.5 million at the global box office. So it did pretty well. An adaptation again of Bret Easton Ellis 1991. Now, could you imagine if this came out in 1901? People would have rioted in the streets. Of the same name.
Nobody would have watched it.
I know. And even the
nobody will watch it now.
I know, right?
I would say this before we start like delving into it. I will say this movie would not survive. No. 2022.
I don't know if you could have released it and done the same thing that you would have done today. Like, I mean, you may have, and it would have been fine.
On the flip side, though, it may be the movie that we need now. Who knows? it's a coin toss right there. It's 50-50 whether it would be completely black sheep or it'd be welcomed with open arms as a statement.
Yeah, I agree. You know, even the original novel, though, when it was released in 91, it was super controversial because of the themes that it emphasizes, the themes that it brings up. You know, it's a play on social norms and capitalism, but it's also, you know, the consumerism and the greed of North America. It's got the violence in general, violence against women, violence against, you know, so many different groups. It's very, like we said before, it's taboo. And he basically, this is what Mr. Ellis had to say about the origin and the idea. This is an exact quote. He says, "Now, this is the author prefacing this. This is the author of the novel, not a writer of the screenplay." He said, "Bateman was crazy the same way I was. He did not come out of me sitting down and wanting to write a grand sweeping indictment of yuppie culture. It initiated because of my own isolation and alienation at a point in my life. I was living like Patrick Bateman. I was slipping into a consumerist kind of void that was supposed to give me confidence and make me feel good about myself, but just made me feel worse and worse and worse about myself. That is where the tension of American Psycho came from. It wasn't that I was going to make up the serial killer on Wall Street. High concept, fantastic. It came from a much more personal place, and that's something that I've only been admitting in the last year or so. I was so on the defensive because of the reaction to that book that I wasn't able to talk about it on that level." So, I mean, American Psycho is really a stab at, no pun intended, at consumerism and those types of things. And I mean, you know, it first when I started reading that, and he said about, you know, he was crazy the same way I was like,
check his file. Check his file.
I was like,
check his file now. Willem Dafoe, where you at?
But the more and more I thought about that, wouldn't you say we all have a level of, you know, because we live in such a society that's more and more, you need more money, you need more stuff, you need a better car, a better house, a nicer job, you need, everything's got to be better. You need everything to be better. And I think that's kind of an interesting concept in and of itself, you know, because if you look at the characters, not even just Patrick Bateman, but if you look at Hey Paul, if you look at all the people that he's with, all of his colleagues and stuff, even the business cards, like it's so, they're so, you know, women and money and food and all of that stuff is so expendable to them. But when you look at their business card or you look at their house, like Patrick Bateman, when he walks in Paul Allen's house and he's like, "Shit, it's nicer than mine," or whatever, or, you know, or something like that. And there's even a line
that I like Patrick Bateman's house more than fucking Paul's.
I know, right?
Right.
But it's just like there are certain things that are so superficial to them and so surface level. You know what I mean? I mean, do you think we're all kind of like that to some extent?
Honestly, man, I think it goes further. I think it goes further down the rabbit hole than we think in regards to this movie. Because how can I say this? Yes, does it delve into the idea of consumerism and the idea of, like, you know, everybody's is like a consumer of everything hot and new and always wanting to impress someone else. But I think, yeah, and that's like an important topic in this movie. But whenever it delves into like the fucking like psychotic breaks and psychotic thoughts that goes on in Patrick Bateman's head, I think that's something that a lot of people don't really realize is like how easy it is to like jump into that rabbit hole. Like all of us are without a doubt tempted to have, or all of us are capable of having these types of thoughts that whether or not you believe it's real or not, if it's not true, and this is just Patrick Bateman's mental state and everything that's in his head, that's like a statement in itself in regards to like how like all of us are capable of having these dark, like really diabolical thoughts. And it just so happens that Patrick Bateman delved into it but never came back out. Like he stayed in that psychotic world that he created in his head, and that's where like you get all of these different types of mental like breaks or psychotic breaks or disorders or whatever you want to call it. He gets into his own world, the world that he created, when he delves so far into like the depths of what I like to call is like our own shadow, which is like our dark side, our process of like our capability of like absolute fucking horrific actions. So not only does it involve like, the idea of outside, consumerism and like superficial actions of our day-to-day lives of someone of the 1%. It also delves into the idea of like, of someone that doesn't feel like they have enough or like they're not satisfied enough. So they're trying to figure out what is something that they can fill in their fill the void in their heart. And for some people, it is like, really like dark shit, like what gives them pleasure. And sometimes it is dark shit. And you'd be surprised to find out that there's a lot of people that think like that. And it's low-key scary to think about it. But nonetheless, it's an important thing to think about whenever you watch this movie, because it's like, oh, Patrick Bateman is capable of thinking just that. And he's a 1%er, top of the class, like literally like biggest, like top of the tax bracket. And he still has these mental thoughts. That means literally anyone down here in like, middle class or lower class or whatever class you think of is capable of having these like dark, horrific thoughts, no matter what kind of person you are, what kind of silver spoon is stuck right up your ass. So it's really fucked up. It's really fucked up movie when you think about it.
Well,
when you get past like all of like the horrific shit that you see. So
yeah, and J-Dad brings up another good point. He says, oh yeah, society nowadays has surpassed those levels of consumerism of the 80s to the point we sell our privacy hundreds of times each day online for practically nothing. I mean, you're right. Even that is like it's kind of an examination of what, again, what's expendable to us. Like, in order to have this, your privacy is just expendable. And I think, even when you see the way that they talk about their money and the way that they talk about women, especially women, the way they talk about drugs, the way they talk about material possessions, it's almost like things like the things that should matter, like people and your job, and that's all just expendable to them. All they care about is what makes them look better compared to the next guy. You know what I mean? It's interesting.
Yeah, I would say that when it comes, another little spark notes to think about is the fact that most of these people that you see, because it's just Patrick Bateman right now that we see in his mind of like how like empty he is and what he's trying to do to fill the void. And that's mainly because the ideology that all of his peers and all of his significant others, like they all are trying to find something so superficial to fill up the void that they have inside them, which is like, clothes, money, cars, recognition, all of that. And they are able to find something. They're able to find something, whether it's a business card or status or money. Every single one of them was able to find something. Or like, at the end of the movie, when one of them was like, I don't care where we eat, as long as we have a reservation. Like that feeling right there is enough to help him feel satisfied in life.
Yeah, it's not about
it's not even about the food for him. Every single one of the people in that movie have something that fills that hole inside their heart, except Patrick Bateman. So that's when he starts going into his little psychotic break, because I think Patrick Bateman finally realized that this whole like consumerism thing is not necessarily something that will fill his void. It's something else, something deeper, darker in his own viewpoint. So yeah, just the amount of layers that you have in this fucking movie is critically acclaimed, that you definitely should like watch it like multiple times to find out what exactly is going on in regards to everyone else, not just Patrick Bateman.
Yeah, honestly, I like that you said fill the void, because there is a void there, and he fills it with the murder and whatever else, whether it's in his head or not is another conversation. But it also goes to show you like money isn't everything. You know what I mean? Your job isn't everything. Like the way you treat people, your relationships with people, that's everything. You know what I mean? Your material possessions, whether he has a nicer apartment than you, although let's be honest, Patrick Bateman's apartment really was better.
Right? I was kind of,
I liked it better.
Like, what the fuck?
And J-Dad, I do see your comment, and I'm gonna get there in just a second. But when you look at Patrick Bateman, you could say a lot of those things for all of those guys, all the 1%ers, as you call them. But when you look at Patrick Bateman specifically, he's very superficial. It's almost like he's OCD and he's very particular about things. But In the words of our great Freddie Mercury, nothing really matters. Like nothing matters to him. Like it really doesn't. It's almost like he's going through the motions of his life. He gets what he wants when he wants, or where he wants it, because he's at the top of this capitalistic food chain. He's got money. He's good looking. His appearance is flawless. But underneath of all of that, he's insane. He's a sociopath. He's a narcissist. And he's actually an interesting character. Like he doesn't care about anybody but himself. And, you know, kind of what Jay did just said, there's a lot of symbolism in the facial mask thing and his morning routine that he goes through every day. You know, that's a good point. We all put on our best face before facing society each day. And you could even argue, why the hell does he need to use his you know, I use a 2-part facial wash before using a mango wash, before using a cucumber wash, and then shoving it up my ass 5 times. No, like it's like, but like, what, you know what I mean? Like, why? Like, what's the point of why it goes back to the whole, like, it's even if you look at social media, people always put their best foot forward. They're always going to put their best face forward. They're going to show you what they want to show you. And Patrick Bateman is doing the same thing. He's going to show you what he wants you to see. Jaded says, give a man a mask and he will tell you the truth. That's perfect. Perfect.
That's pretty good.
And I found this other quote from Jennifer Krause, who wrote an analysis on the novel and the character of Patrick Bateman. And I wanted to share it because I even thought it was a very profound, I guess you'd say, explanation of the character. She said, on the one hand is a rich Wall Street banker, Bateman, concerned and very self-conscious about every detail of his physical appearance, expensive possessions, and the control of people and the world around him. But on the other hand, the inner self of Patrick Bateman, the Aboriginal self who copes and relinquishes his outer complications and fake identity created by consumerism through violence on other human beings who he finds consumable. That's very important. He finds other human beings consumable and expresses absolute control of his desires and true self through his violent fantasies. His consumer artificial self, proceeding in society as a wealthy consumer, would live and spend his income versus his natural self, who instead of spending money would hunt and prey on the weak and vulnerable, usually women whom he deems expendable. Bateman treats the people around him just like any other consumer product because of the void he still battles with. There's what you were saying about the void, and wishes to fulfill from within, hence having dual personas, having the dull artificial identity compared to his free, limitless persona of his mind.
Damn. So would you say if you want to talk about his like split personality thing, would you say that Patrick Bateman's split personality in regards when it comes to like Paul Allen and all that stuff?
I'm Patricia. No, I don't.
Would you think that that's him attempting to create another persona in his life or in his head to see if he could fill a void in that personality, and if it doesn't work out, he can always switch back to his other?
I don't know.
Because if you think about it, like obviously in the movie, you're starting to puzzle together that maybe Patrick Bateman bought Paul Allen's place, and he just made that, that's Paul Allen's place.
That's fair.
So maybe Patrick. So it's like, it's so weird because when he makes a split personality, it's so fucked up because whenever he's jealous of like Paul Allen or Davis or Patrick Bateman, he's actually jealous of himself. So he's like in a never-ending circle of like, oh, I wish I had that, or oh, I wish I could have what Davis had, or I wish I could have what Paul Allen has. So it's like, it's such a weird like circle that he has with one another, or even like a love triangle with like wanting more of what he doesn't have.
Yeah.
And it's just his personalities in itself.
I think that's interesting, and I think there's something to be said about, to me, I always kind of took the pretending to be Paul thing and all of that stuff as he's trying to cover up what he did. I guess you could argue, and even watching it a second time, or I've seen it more than twice, but even watching it this most recent time, I've kind of been like, maybe there is something more to this dual personality. Maybe he was really embodying Paul Allen, or maybe he's really based on the end when the guy calls him, what does he call him? Davis, I think. Is it Davis?
Yeah, Davis.
When he calls him Davis, it's almost like there's a second there where you're like,
is Patrick Bateman real?
Like, exactly. Is he a real person? What is really going on here? So I guess you could argue that it is more of a persona, a dual split personality type thing where he's trying to fill that void with other personalities. But I think there's also something to be said about the fact that he's trying to cover up the fact that he killed Paul. If he really did it and it wasn't all in his head. It's definitely up for interpretation. I mean, if you know,
well, that's the thing. Paul Allen never died. I
know, but that's kind of something that, you know, is interesting. Like, you don't know, and we're actually going to get into this in a minute when we kind of talk about the production and the response to the movie, because we as an audience member, we don't really know what it. There, obviously, Paul Allen did not die. We found that out at the end of the film, unless that was all in his brain too. I mean, I don't know, but there's kind of, it's left up to interpretation what he, and I know you said you have some thoughts on this, but like what he actually did versus what he made up in his head, you know. J-Dead says, to me, it was more of a split between his adult self and his inner child. Just like a child, when he gets jealous, he can't express feelings. He becomes violent and has a tantrum with the strength of an adult. That's very insightful too.
I was about to not agree with you until you said until you said the tantrum of a child, the strength of an adult. I was like, yeah, that's pretty good.
Well, and even like kind of talking about the production a little bit. The novel was extremely controversial. I mean, it was on the banned book list. It's shrink wrapped in other countries because of how hardcore it is. And Brett Ellis didn't think that a movie adaptation he thought it didn't need to be made. And speaking of the whole did he do it versus did he not do it thing, he felt like it wouldn't translate well because of Patrick Bateman's character. You know, and I think in the time since the release, he stated that he thought that it wouldn't work because even as the author of the novel, he couldn't figure out whether or not the things that Patrick Bateman was doing were real events or hallucinations or just in his mind, or whether they were just blatant lies, whether it's to the audience, to himself. Like, in other words, he's so crazy. How do you begin to figure out as an audience member what's real and what's not? You know what I mean? But again, the fact that we're having this conversation, that's part of what makes it interesting, is the fact that it's like, you get to kind of go through that in your head. It's like, what the hell is it real? Is it not real? Like what exactly, you know what I mean? But I think that's part of what makes the movie interesting, you know? And I've never read the novel. I actually would kind of like to. I'm not much of a big reader, but I wouldn't mind trying to give it a shot. Scary horror movies. What's going on? He says, hi guys, sorry I'm late. Just got back from a Father's Day with my dad. Oh, we didn't even happy Father's Day, everybody. Happy Father's Day. Scary horror movies. Happy Father's Day to your dad. Happy Father's Day to all you awesome dads out there.
Shout out to the dads.
Completely forgot to say, hey, to dads everywhere.
To dads.
To Patrick Bateman's dad, who is probably not in the picture.
No, not in the picture at all. Otherwise, this movie would never happen.
I'm kidding. But happy Father's Day, everybody. So, you know, speaking about the production a little bit, this movie, like many other horror flicks, kind of had a tortured production. It was really hard to get this thing off the ground and running. The first round of discussions actually went back and happened to adapt it in 1992. So a year after the book came out, Edward Pressman, who was a film producer, bought the rights to it. And now at that time, you'll find this interesting, Johnny Depp showed a lot of interest in wanting to play Patrick Bateman. And I'd love to have seen what Johnny Depp would have brought to the role. Could you imagine him in the role of Patrick Bateman?
Johnny Depp?
Yeah, that'd be pretty sick. Honestly,
I don't know.
If there was anybody but
I feel
Christian
like at that
Bale,
time, he was pretty much too pretty boy. You know what I mean?
Fair.
Yeah, he was too much of a pretty boy, which again makes sense with the whole, like, you know, young American banker. They're supposed to be like young, charismatic, and, you know, handsome. So it could have worked, but what's hard for me right now is like it's insane to think that like if American Psycho didn't like have Christian Bale as Patrick Bateman, it's almost as if like, well, who else could have done it?
Yeah.
And I honestly could not have seen even Leonardo DiCaprio doing it, which is, I don't know if you mentioned that if he was the one that could have been there.
That's where we're getting ready to go, because there were a slew of people that were actually that the studio wanted, because as I said, the studio did not want Christian Bale. So after the original talks in '92 fell through, Brad Pitt was set to star as Patrick Bateman, and David Cronenberg was attached to direct. But the problem was, from what I understand, they wanted to change a lot of the sequences from the book, and Brett Ellis was not real happy about that. I mean, hell, he was already on the fence about wanting to turn it into a movie anyways. So, you know, he was already kind of hanging off the side of not wanting to do it at all. But I think the fact that they wanted to change so much of it, you know, especially since, you know, I mean, look at Harry Potter, look at any novel adaptation, they leave a lot of things out, you know. And then at that point, Ellis was grabbed. He was going to help pen the script for it, but he was bored with it. He sat for it for like 3 years. He was tired of the idea. He was over it. I read that he even wrote a script that had Patrick Bateman dancing to Barry Manilow at the top of the World Trade Center in one of the scripts. Like, just over it at that point. He was just done with it. And Norman Schneider and Rob Weiss, I'm kind of going through all these names here. They were picked to do other drafts, but nothing stuck. And this probably would have been like 94, 95, somewhere in there. And the guy that was hellbent on getting the movie made was like, he's over it now. It had been 3 or 4 years. So by this point, Brett Ellis was over it. He was the producer. Ed Pressman was over it. It seemed like American Psycho was kind of dead in the water. And they even tried to sell the rights at the Cannes Film Festival in 1996, but nobody wanted it. So this is going on 6 years of nobody wanting this. They can't figure it out. It seemed like it was going to be an impossible story to translate to the screen. And this is where we started to gain traction. The studio had seen Mary Harron at the Cannes Film Festival in '96, the year they tried to sell the rights, when she did I Shot Andy Warhol. And they liked her work. They offered it to her to direct. She wasn't a fan of the novel because of how graphic and violent it was. But here's kind of the interesting thing. And this is what I tried to explain to Julia. She saw an opportunity to make a very satirical period piece about the 1980s, and a very, very much a social commentary laced film. And she liked how tricky the story was going to be to tell. She took them up on their offer, but she only agreed if she could write her own screenplay, which she did with Guinevere Turner. So the two of them ended up writing the screenplay that became American Psycho. And it's interesting because, to the best of my knowledge, neither of them were horror fans, but they saw an opportunity to tell an extremist story laced with social commentary, which it is. I mean, the story lends itself well to that. And I think
there really isn't many in the horror aspects or horror. There isn't many like horror aspects in this movie, if you think about it.
Yeah, I like the fact that she was like, I don't really want to do it. And they were like, it's going to be really hard to do. And she was like, I'll do it. I like somebody who likes a challenge.
It's hard. Okay, bet.
Jada says Johnny Depp would have probably played, I cannot, blah, blah, blah. Johnny Depp would have probably played a lot like his character in Secret Window. Dude, he does a very good job in Secret Window. That's a good movie. Geeked Out Turtles fan 42. What's going on, Geeked Out? Hello, guys.
Raphael.
I like that picture, man. Didn't like the sequel, but the first one was slick. Yeah, I don't know. I honestly have never seen American Psycho 2.
The second one was with Mila Kunis, and I think I saw the ending of it, and it was so fucking tacky.
Well, but I don't think she even wanted to do it. I feel like, again, I've never seen it. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I think she actually signed on to do something different, and they were like, by the way, this is going to be American Psycho 2. And it was like, what? Like, I don't know. There was something weird that went on with that. This brings us to Christian Bale. So the script and the story and the movie's finally gaining a little bit of traction.
Bro, William Shatner was in American Psycho 2. Can you believe that?
Are you shitting me? No way.
Yeah.
Who the hell did he play? Who did he
I don't
play?
know. A victim, most likely. That's Spock, my guy.
Is that Spock? He
That's
didn't play
Spock.
Spock, did he?
He did not play Spock. He played Kirk.
All right, that one I'll do it to myself. That
Guys.
deserves it. Oh man.
That's Michael Myers too. What the fuck is wrong with you?
You can tell I'm not. What do you mean? What's Michael Myers?
William Shatner's face was the first mask of Michael Myers, wasn't it?
Yes. It
Yeah.
was a
So
mask.
yeah.
What
So
the hell
I
does
say
that
to
have
this
to do
day-
with anything?
All I'm saying, you should have known. Like, I'm just saying. William Shatner is such an iconic character. You mixed him up with fucking Spock.
Well, I did. I'm not a Star Trek guy. I've tried. But at first, Christian Bale didn't have any interest in it. He was like, I've never read the book. He kind of wasn't about it. But they sent him the script. He read the script. He thought it was funny. He liked it. And he auditioned in Mary Harron's living room in New York City. And then Willem Dafoe and Jared Leto signed on after that. Now, he was an excellent choice. And in preparing for this, I was kind of looking into a bit about his preparation for it, which, I mean, if you look at what Christian Bale does, Christian Bale is very much I think he's a character actor. I think he dives in 100%. If you look at what he did in Vice, if you look at what he did in Ford versus Ferrari, Public Enemies, The Fighter, I mean, he's done a lot of really, really good hardcore roles. I mean, you know, I know everybody talks about Batman, and I know I like him as Batman, but a lot of people don't. But I mean, he's done body transformations. He's done a lot of different things. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I know. J-Dad, I know. He said Trekkies Across the Universe felt that one. I know. I'll admit it. I'm telling you, I'll admit it. I know I'm not a Star Trek guy. You know, the guy's committed to his roles, and you know, he had gotten warnings from colleagues, because I think you have to remember at this point, I don't think Christian Bale was a super known actor in North America. I think he was mostly a well-known actor in you know, in the UK and overseas. But you know, he had gotten warnings from colleagues that were like, you know, this is going to kill your career. This is a bad career choice. People are not. This is already a sketchy story that's kind of on the banned book list. People aren't about it. But I think that made him wanted to do it more, which is why he's committed, which makes me excited to see what he brings to Gore, the God Butcher, and Thor: Love and Thunder. You know, you know, and he even went through a slight Americanized body transformation. He got his teeth fixed. He worked out a lot. He was getting tan. He stayed in character while they were shooting American Psycho, which kind of freaked everybody out. He would only speak with an American accent. He worked out all the time to maintain the physique and the build of Patrick Bateman. I even read that he figured out how to make himself sweat, like during the
those fucking like just all sweaty and shit whenever he's looking at the card.
Oh yeah. Well, you get like the zoom in on his face,
God.
and he's just like,
it's like, oh my God, the fucking watermarks. It's even watermarked. He's like fucking salivating out of his pores. I was like, well, where are we going?
Well, and if you notice them, they all look freaking the same. It's like there's like one minor difference. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a couple minor differences, but they're all different in some aspect. I was just looking up Christian Bale's filmography. Honestly, man, I don't recognize any of these except for American Psycho, like in his earlier ones. Like the only one I probably would know is like Little Woman, and that's it. Everything else, the Newsies. Oh wait, never mind. He was in Newsies.
Yeah, he did Newsies. He did.
Okay, so yeah, he was Newsies, but that was like, you know, when 1992, so he was like fairly young still. But like, golly, yeah,
he did his engaged sweat pores with the That's funny, man. I picture him like in the room, like before he's just like like trying to like really tense up to try to get himself to sweat. Can get himself to sweat. It's called cocaine. They were actually doing blow on the. No, I'm kidding. You know, but they were freaked out. A lot of the people on the set of American Psycho had said they had never seen an actor that was so committed to a role like he did. And as I kind of teased before, Lionsgate didn't want to cast him at all. They wanted Edward Norton or Leonardo DiCaprio. They were their two big that they wanted at first. Edward Norton was already pretty big. Leo had just done Titanic in 1997, which has just blown the hell up. Titanic was a huge deal.
Mm-hmm.
And Leo was very close to playing him, but there were a lot of disagreements about the script, how he would play the character. There was a lot of stuff that kind of changed about Leo, and it went on for some months. I think it was like 8 or 9 months or something that Leo was set to play Patrick Bateman. And then Christian Bale was so confident that Leonardo DiCaprio was going to drop out of the movie that he kept working for like 8 or 9 months straight and prepping and reading the script and working out and going through this body transformation just to do it, which is pretty sick. It's pretty awesome.
Look at the fucking confidence in this man, knowing
I know, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna seal this fucking deal.
Geeked Out Turtles fan says, I'm not gonna lie, I'm thrown off by Miguel looking like Magnum PI. You do look like Magnum.
Thanks,
PI.
man. I was just trying this out. I'm getting ready for a Jimmy Buffett concert, so I just got this shirt. Just want to see how good it looks on me. And obviously,
yeah, we're going to see Jimmy
Magnum
Buffett.
PI. Huh? Yeah, we are.
Yeah, Miguel and I are going to go see Jimmy Buffett in a few months. It's weak. He says LMAO geeked. But that was interesting. And I mean, even here's the thing though, Lionsgate was working so hard against Christian Bale, even after Leo dropped, they still didn't want to offer it to Christian Bale. They were prepared to pay Leo 20. Listen to how screwed up this is. This is one of the ways Hollywood just sucks sometimes. Leo, they were prepared to pay him $20 million to play Patrick Bateman.
Mm-hmm.
You know how? Take a guess. How much? Everybody in the chat right now, take a guess at how much they paid Christian Bale. Leo DiCaprio was getting ready to make $20 million to play him. Guess how much they paid Christian Bale. What's your guess, Miguel?
Mine? How much was it again?
They were going to pay Leo DiCaprio $20 million, a small loan of $20 million to play Patrick Bateman. But but guess how much they paid Christian Bale?
I mean, I just looked it up and it was $1 million.
I read he got 50 grand.
Oh, at first, yeah, probably at first, just 50 grand. But over the course of the gross income and how well the movie did, it made 5 times more than its production budget. So remember that.
No. I'm talking about Christian Bale's pay. I'm not talking about the budget of the grossing of the film. I'm talking about they were going to pay Leonardo DiCaprio $20 million just to Leo to play him, but they didn't like Christian Bale and they only paid him 50 grand.
Bro, that's wild. If you think about it, yeah. If you think about how much of a small
$2.50. Jay did said 4.8 million. Yeah, I was
gonna say a cat in the ATM.
Yeah, had to be seriously over 50 grand. From what I understand, they paid him 50 grand for it. Jay did says Miguel gonna try to sell us reverse mortgages in a minute. You're one of those spam accounts. That's what you are.
Guys, it's not a pyramid scheme, okay? Just follow my lead. Just tell your friends to join.
At this channel, we talk movies.
Yeah.
If you'll click on this link and pay $9.99. No, I'm kidding. But even before they hired Christian Bale, they offered it, are you ready, to Ewan McGregor. They offered it to Ben Affleck.
Obi-Wan.
They offered it to Matt Damon. They offered it to Edward Norton. They even offered it to Vince Vaughn. And they all turned it down. I don't know why on earth they were so against him.
Okay, I'm glad Vince Vaughn didn't do it because that would have been really weird.
If you remember, Vince Vaughn played wow.
What did he play?
Horror fans, spite me down. Psycho.
What?
Who? The son in Psycho, the killer.
Oh shit, he really did. Not bad.
Holy crap! What's his name?
In the movie Psycho, Norman
Yeah.
Bates.
Norman Bates. Good. Listen, horror fans, cancel me. He played Norman Bates, not in the OG Psycho, but in the remake of Psycho, which is just terrible. He did play Norman. Yeah, thank you, J-Dad. I'm losing. All I could think was Patrick Bateman. But yeah, so Geeked Out Turtle Fan says Matt Damon would be too nice to play psychotic. Yes. I don't know. What do you think about Matt Damon? Could you see Matt Damon being crazy?
No, I'd always think it's Jason Bourne. Yeah.
Matt Damon just says more badass than crazy.
Yeah. That's Edward Norton, I don't know. He's too much of like a, I don't know. When I think of Edward Norton, I think of like, obviously, let me think. I would say he's too much like a gangster kind of ish feel. And yeah, he played Fight Club, but he played as a dimwit, I guess.
Yeah.
And he was also in American History, if you guys don't remember that one. And
we're talking about Damon, right?
No, I'm talking about Edward Norton right now.
Oh, yeah.
Matt Damon's out of the question. Yeah, I couldn't see him as, I couldn't see it. Yeah. But Edward Norton, maybe Edward Norton.
I could see Edward Norton, honestly, maybe more than anyone. I like Edward Norton.
This man played the most racist human being in existence in cinema history. Yeah.
We also can't forget Edward Norton played Bruce Banner.
That's besides the point. But we're just talking about movies that like expresses his like
where he would make a good Patrick Bateman, like a crazy self-absorbed.
Yeah, like crazy like megalomaniac. But that's what I mean. Like Edward Norton, like when he played like whoever it was in American History, he was openly like, I hate you and your kind. So like I haven't seen a movie where he like plays someone that's like battling in his mind. Which is funny because if you think about it, the two people now I'm thinking out that could possibly do a good job as Patrick Bateman is Leo DiCaprio and Vince Vaughn.
I don't know, man. For some reason, like I don't know why they were hooked on Leo so much. I can't see him.
It's just he's so versatile at the time, I guess. I don't know.
I mean, I guess, but there's something I feel like for Bateman, you would need. I could see the self-absorbed douchebag 1%er rich guy. I could see that, but I don't know if I could see the hey Paul, like I don't know if I could see like the running naked with a chainsaw down the hallway kind of like
he's never
like I don't know if I could see the craziness.
Don't worry, guys. He's never seen The Wolf of Wall Street. Okay, just let him be.
I have seen The Wolf, but that's what I'm saying. I could see him like being the super rich, self-absorbed dude, but I don't know if I could see him doing the wild and like when he does just let loose. I don't know if I could see him doing that as much. You know, he
pretty good in he did pretty good in the Django.
He did.
He also did pretty good in Shutter Island too. When
fair.
he was supposed to be like in Shutter Island, he played as someone that was mentally insane. So he did it pretty. And if you think about it, Shutter Island was definitely one of the movies where he almost played Patrick Bateman. Because remember, he was a detective trying to find out what happened to some murders, and he ended up. Never mind, spoiler alert. But you know what I'm talking about,
bro. The movie's been out for like 2 decades.
Okay. If you guys haven't seen it, yeah, fuck you. Yeah, so he's a detective, and he's trying to figure out these murders, and turns out he's one of the fucking mental patients in insane asylum. And Mark Ruffalo's in it too, so it's pretty cool. The Hulk's in that one too.
I'll never forget. I remember my parents when Shutter Island came out. My parents went and saw it like on a date, and I had never. I mean, I've seen it since then, and it's all right. I mean, it's not like my favorite Leo movie, but I remember they came back. My first like reaction of hearing about Shutter Island, I was like, "Hey, how was the movie?" They were like, "That was the worst movie I've ever seen in my life." I was like, "It was bad." They were like, "Yeah, it was awful." But yeah, J-Dad says Neil Patrick Harris?
He could do it. Yeah, I think he could do it. Probably. It wouldn't be like a cult classic as it is with Christian Bale, but he could do it.
Maybe. Geeked Out Turtle Fan says, I erased that horrible Psycho. He said I erased that horrible remake from my brain and now it's back. Thank you. Yeah, that Psycho remake is awful.
Anytime.
I told you because Psycho is Julia actually loves, like, two of her favorite movies ever are Psycho, the original Psycho, and The Shining. She loves both of those. And I said, do you want to try and watch the remake of Psycho? We were clicking through movies to watch last Halloween, and she was like, nope. I said, really? I said, you don't even want to give it a shot? She was like, nope, it'll taint the original. I don't want to watch it. I was like, okay. Like, all right. I've only ever seen the remake once, but from what I remember, I was not a fan. Geeked Out Turtle fan also says, American History X, Norman played a racist.
I didn't want to say it, but
I've never seen American History.
But yeah, he was dog. Edward Norton played a fucking neo-Nazi. He was a neo-Nazi in fucking LA. Yeah. And the things he did in that movie was pretty fucked. So.
He also says, you know who plays Good Crazy? Steve Buscemi, who is in Con Air. He does play Good Crazy. I couldn't picture Steve Buscemi as Patrick Bateman.
Oh my god,
that would be weird. That'd be kind of funny.
Geeked Out Turtle fan, I love you so much. The fact that you've referenced Con Air. Oh my god, that just reminds me. Fuck, Nick Cage could have done it.
Don't knock Con Air. Oh god. No, Con Air is a pretty decent movie. I'm not gonna lie. I like Con Air.
It was such like a 90s hero movie. It was so fucking cheesy. And when Steve Buscemi came out, I did not know who he was at the time. So I just thought, I was like, golly, this guy's pretty good. And then I saw him on all of the Happy Madison productions with like Adam Sandler and seeing how funny he is. And then I'd watch Con Air again. And I'd be like, bro, this guy, a fucking comedic actor, is playing a fucking serial killer. He was like, one time I crossed like 3 state lines wearing her face as a hat. I was like, what? I was like, what? And then Steve Buscemi he breaks out and he like ends up playing at a casino. It's like, give me 12 on roll dice 17 or some bullshit like that.
I need you to stop doing this behind your mic.
I'm gonna keep doing it now that you want to. Now that you hate it. But
now that I want to.
Yeah, Steve Buscemi in Con Air was pretty good. He like I gotta say, in Con Air, they really made Steve Buscemi like so frightening because they set him up so well. Like, yeah, Cyrus the Virus. I forgot who plays Cyrus the Virus in that movie. But when they introduced like Steve Buscemi, Carson Green is the guy that he played as like this giant like serial killer with like over like 30 kills. He said one of the guys said that he made the Manson family look like the Partridge Family, and I was like, "Fuck, dude, it's got some big deal."
Wow. So J-Dad also says Edward Norton in Primal Fear. He played a sociopath. Yeah, that's a good one too. Although I haven't seen Primal Fear in a long time.
I don't think I've ever heard of Primal Fear.
I'm glad we have this show because there are so many movies that like I even lately like that I've been talking to you and Julia about, and I'm like, man, I want to go back. And we actually have I guess it's not really, I mean, it's not a huge announcement, but something we want to do on the other show, on Let's Talk Movies on the main show, is I think we figured out a way to go back and like revisit some of those older movies. Like I know we've talked about doing Peter Jackson's King Kong and Godzilla from '98. Like we've talked about doing those and maybe doing like a watch along of those, or so we'll kind of figure that out, and that's something we want to do maybe starting next month. But we'll have an announcement about that later on the main show. Real quick, Jaded says Nick Cage's Southern accent was the only scary thing in Con Air. What's that movie? Let's see. Nick Cage. What is that movie?
I'm Not a Bad Man. Yeah, but it was his fucking hair, dude. That was such like a 90s saying. Just like when he got out of the fucking prison, his hair was just like flowing through his fucking head. Bro, I gotta say, Con Air was a movie where Nick Cage literally like showed his fucking guns. That man was fucking yo.
Oh, Raising Arizona. Dude, have you seen Raising Arizona?
No.
Dude, it is awesome. It's funny because Raising Arizona, he plays this country redneck dude, and him and his wife they can't conceive a child, and they're going like to extreme lengths to try to have one. And there's this family that has like they have like quintuplets or something like that, and Nick Cage actually goes and steals one of their kids from them, and he's like outrunning the cops, and it's a funny movie, man. I love Raising Arizona, but that's another good one. Yeah, Jaden says love Raising Arizona. That's a funny Nick Cage one too. Real quick, let's talk about the plot a little bit. Let's kind of dive into some of, we talked about this earlier, but some of the things that happen, the investigation with Donald Kimball and the private investigating, and kind of the beats of the movie a little bit. We kind of get a glimpse of the lifestyle, like when we open up from when they're in the restaurant, you can tell they eat together at popular restaurants every night. There's even something to be said about the fact that they only, you kind of get the vibe that they only spend time with their coworkers who they're already with at work all the time, and they're trying to compete with. It's like it's kind of sad in a way, because it's like they're only trying to compete with them. It's like they wake up, they do their whole routine to try to make themselves look as good as they can. Then they go to work and they're trying to be the best and they're trying to compete. And then they go to dinner and they're trying to be the best and they're trying to compete. Even they keep talking about who can get a reservation at Dorsia. That's like a thing. Even when
Dorsia was the thing.
Dorsia is the thing that made Patrick Bateman crazy. No, but even in the scene with the business cards, and when they're talking about, like, at the beginning, like, Dorsia, nobody can ever get a reservation at Dorsia and stuff like that, like they're competing with each other all the time. And we get a sense of their lifestyle. They do blow everywhere they go, in the bathroom, every club. You know what I mean? Their day is basically.
Do you mind? I'm doing drugs over here. Yeah, it's like. I was like, Jesus Christ.
Well, and then his buddy was like, I forgot what he even says to him when he leans over the stall and he's like bitching about or whatever. And Christian Bale is just like, he just like drags him back down. And
he's like dragging him down. He's like, you're ruining my fucking high right now. Yeah. Something like that. I was like, what?
Hey man, we're trying to do drugs over here.
It's like both of them are ruining each other's high, but they're trying to get high together, and like a fucking terrible breath. And there's like 15 people in line to do the exact same thing. So also, it's like, bro, how normal it is over there at like Wall Street, or just like the 1% in general, how important like drugs were to them, like blow in general.
Let's just ask this question too. And I never really, I guess, thought about it until right now, because it.
What do you think he did some wrong drug and then he went to hallucination?
But what the hell club? It's the 80s, so I guess anything goes. But anything. I guess set in the 80s. But the dude, what club? The club has like 15 stalls, but they're all. It's like drug stalls. Like nobody's actually like going to the bathroom. Everybody's just in the bathroom doing blow. It's literally just a row of stalls and people are doing lines of coke off the.
Bro, it was literally something. It was something that I remember it was a podcast with like Joe Rogan and Joey Diaz, and Joe Rogan was asking Joey Diaz about like Studio 66 or something that was going on in LA, and Joe Rogan was like, "So what was the big deal about Studio 66?" And Joey Diaz was so quick to the dot. He was like, You could snort coke, do blow, get head, and then be home by 6 o'clock. It was fucking great. So I was like, and that was like back then. So yeah, like these clubs, that's what they're all about. You do drugs, you have sexual affairs, and you do all the other sorts of dirty, grimy shit, and then you're just home by 6 o'clock, and you can kiss your wife and kids good night, and just do it all over again.
Yeah.
It was
shit, J-Dad's dropping legit stuff here. He says they're all trapped in a constant cycle of competing to the point that they have to go to the same places and do the same things. That's very true. Even if you look at like it's weird, because even when we see them in the nightclub and stuff, it's like they almost look like they're too good to be there. You know what I mean? Like they're so comfortable with the fact that they're just openly doing blow, and that they're openly just treating women like they're objects. And it's interesting. Like it's kind of strange, even if you look at even looking at his relationships with other people, at Evelyn, Reese Witherspoon's character, like Reese Witherspoon is trying to have a life with him. Like she's talking about their marriage or whatever. And he, they're talking about their wedding, and she wants to marry him. And she, she's whatever, but she's trying to be real with him, and she's trying to have a relationship with him. And like at the beginning when they're in the car, and he's like, I'm trying to listen to my video or my tape. What? And he just acts irritated with her. You know what I mean? At all, like at all times, he seems like he's irritated with the fact that that she's even talking to him. Even the chick that he's having the affair with, it just seems like one of the saddest points in the movie for me is when, he like at one point he goes and he sleeps with the chick he's having the affair with, but she's trying to talk to him, and he's just like, what? Like he seems so irritated and so annoyed, and she's trying to be real with him, and it kind of implies that she's gonna commit suicide because she's so unhappy. You know, she doesn't want to marry the guy she's with, but Patrick doesn't really want her either. You know, and that's where I think yes, it's.
And you also know, like the guy that she's married to at that moment, has pretty dark moments as well. Like when Patrick Bateman was about to like choke him out, and in the restroom, he turned around, he was like, Patrick, I've waited for this for so long. He was like, bro, this guy gay. Dude, I was like, whoa. I said, that's like a 180 right there. And Patrick didn't know what to say. He was like,
I think
he even washed his hands with gloves on, and I was like, what the fuck?
It's his reaction, like he.
Well, it's the fact
again, it's a period piece. In the 80s, that would have been very, taboo, I mean, nowadays, not at all. That but it's his response to it is funny. Like when he washes his hands, and he's like, he looks very like taken back by the fact that he just did that.
Yeah,
and that just happened.
In that moment as well, just perpetuates the.
I wonder if that happens the same way in the book.
I don't know, but the fact that happened kind of tells me that what was his name? That even
I forget.
I'm trying to look it up right now. Harold is his name. The guy that's married to I think Christy is what? No, it's not Christy, but nevertheless, Harold when he was like, oh, thank God, Patrick. Like I've been waiting for this. He was also putting on a mask too by marrying that girl,
right?
Because he didn't want to be his true self. I guess he was again like what J-Dad said. Everyone puts give someone a mask and they will tell you the truth. It's like, yeah, everyone was putting on a mask or a face or something like that.
Yeah.
And it just befuddled me how like he was also one of them, because he seemed like the only person that was kind of sane in there. Like he was just there to be there, I guess.
Yeah. That's a good scene too. That's one of the more comedic scenes in the movie too.
Yeah, that was probably one of them. Yeah.
It's just like seeing the drawn out look on his face of like he's getting ready to choke this dude out, and he's standing there peeing, he's got himself out or whatever, and he's in the mindset of I'm gonna literally strangle him to death, and then when the guy's like or whatever, and he just like it's a cool thing.
I think it was that moment where Patrick Bateman realized he was like, oh shit, I'm not the one in control right now. I need to get the fuck out of here. So that was a moment where like he did not have control over the situation, so he didn't want to be a part of it, because Patrick Bateman throughout this movie was like, I need to be in control of everything, which plays into like his OCD nature and everything else, and all of his victims and all of the things he's said and how he controls himself, and how he speaks and all the whole group settings. Like he wants to be in control of damn near everything. And the second that he doesn't feel like he has that,
100%,
he automatically snaps or goes into his different world. So yeah, dude, that was fucking hilarious.
Well, it's after, he says every single character in the movie had a mask, and that's 100%, man. But like we even see, honestly, you're right. It's like after something bad happens, it's when he, like the homeless guy, when he kills him, the business card thing just triggered him off, and he had to go kill somebody. It's interesting. Like, even let's talk about the Paul Allen thing, because there's obviously, through the dialogue, through the business card thing, there's a lot of tension between him and Paul Allen, and you almost get a sense that he's not obsessed with him, but he definitely compares himself to him a lot. And the whole even when he pops he drugs Paul Jared Leto's character, and he's drunk or whatever, and he's like, order another, Paul, or whatever, and he's like, this is Dorcia. And he's like, this is Dorcia or whatever, and he's like, yes, or whatever, and he's trying to trick him and thinking it's Dorcia. And when he gets back to his apartment, and I listened, I have talked about this scene, and Julia is really sick of me. She's like, I can't wait for you to do this episode, because all the time I'm like, but I don't even care. And I keep singing, but I don't know what's going on. It's hip to be square. I keep singing it. But
you need to put that on the aux. You know,
right?
When you guys are driving, just to piss her off.
I did the other day, and she was like, but the whole thing with Paul is interesting, because that's the first real. I mean, we see the homeless guy. That's the second murder. I think honestly that's a good point too, Jay. He says Paul Allen was one person that he saw himself in the most. That's why his hatred for him was on another level. It's interesting, because it's like there's that perspective, but there's also the idea that he envied him so much that he had to eliminate. It's like eliminate the threat. It's like a primal thing. Eliminate Paul. But that whole scene is just one of the. It's like. I don't know, because he's even talking about social norms when he's talking about, do you like Huey Lewis in the news? And he's like, I thought their older stuff was a little whatever, but but then when Sports came out in '83, and he's talking about, I'm spitting all over my mic, and he's being like whatever, and he's being all very animated, very, very whatever. It's like that's a little bit of social commentary too, because he's talking about social norms and he's talking about conformity and things like that.
Well, that's the thing. When Patrick Bateman is talking as a normal person, you notice what he talks about. He talks about commentary of like social norms and how things should be, like how people should treat women and how women are just equal as one of us. And then he talks so much about this like commentary on like social norms. Yeah, he then shoves like an axe in Paul Allen's fucking face. It's like, what?
But that's what I try to explain to Julia is, and I think you really have to, with this one, you really have to read between the lines a little bit, because yes, it's very brutal. Yes, he is awful, and the things that he does and the things he says are complete. I mean, they're atrocious, but you have to read between the lines, because it's when you see the way he's talking to women, it's like, oh, this is awful, and you sympathize with the woman. That's the social commentary. You're supposed to sympathize with her when, when you see the way he talks to the chick he's having the affair with, and she's trying to have a meaningful conversation with him, and
he's doped up.
Well, after they just got laid, and then he's trying to have a conversation with her. She's trying to have a conversation with him, and she's like, if I don't talk to you, take care. And I think it implies she's going to commit suicide. So that was the first time, that was her final plea of, I'm going to try to get this guy to identify with me and care about me. And he doesn't. He's just another guy that's just going to write her off. He just wants her to get laid, and that's it. That's the only reason he wants her. And that's sad. Even when he's talking about, politics, I don't remember the whole diatribe that he says when they're sitting in the restaurant eating, but he's like, I think we treat women terribly, and I think we need to, do better for the middle and lower classes, and blah, blah, blah. And he's saying all this stuff that sounds really great, but again, like you said, under the surface of all of that is the way he treats women, and he straight up kills people, and he acts like they're expendable.
And you notice that whenever he talks like that, all of his friends or peers just write him off, like, oh yeah, you're talking crazy nonsense here. Like, why bother? So it's like you can't really put a picture on like where his like actual mental, like who is the real like Patrick Bateman, or who is the real Marcus, or who's the real Davis, like which one of them is actually real. Because as far as I'm concerned, Patrick Bateman isn't real whenever I think about it. So it's like who is who, and who is and who is the actual host of the body.
Yeah, and it's like Moon Knight. Give me the body. Give me the body.
Yeah.
But you also have to think about
take the body.
Even when we're thinking about Paul Allen, Paul didn't realize he was Patrick Bateman. He thought he was somebody else. Patrick was pretending to be someone else when he killed him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he was Marcus.
Yeah, he was.
So if
He
you
was
think
the other
about it, how
guy.
many personalities did he play as?
Exactly. And even in the scene when he kills Paul, when, he takes the 2 pills and he puts on the raincoat or whatever, which, by the way, when he goes in the bathroom and he takes the pills, he looks at himself in the mirror and he's still talking about Huey Lewis and the music and whatever. And he grabbed the axe is sitting next to the bathtub. He puts the coat on, he pops his pills, he looks in the mirror and he grabs the axe. When he moonwalks out of the bathroom, that was actually improvised by him. And it's funny because they didn't include Jared Leto in the rehearsals of that scene. So when he says, people didn't listen to him, but they should, and he's holding the axe or whatever. After, I always think it's funny when Jared Leto goes.
Was that a genuine like concern? Was that a genuine like fear for Jared Leto whenever he turned around and he saw Christian Bale just like swinging the axe?
When he goes, "Hey, Paul," and he turns around and he goes. And he like goes, oh, that was legit because he had never seen him running at him with the axe before. So that was really Jared Leto's like reaction to it. But it's funny because
and that was probably him like that was probably Jared Leto thinking like I should stick to singing. Oh shit.
Maroon 5. Well, who does he see? Is it Maroon 5? No.
I think it's the Killers, if I'm not mistaken, right?
No, it's not the Killers. Let
me see. It was 30 Seconds to Mars. I'm stupid.
Yeah, we suck.
Yeah, damn, we're dropping the ball here, guys.
No, but I like it when he's sitting there, he's drunk or whatever, and he's kind of like slumped over, and he's just he's wasted. He's just saying whatever crap, and he goes, "Why are there copies of the style section all over the floor? Do you have a little dog? Little chow or something?"
That's pretty good.
Whatever. Yeah, he says, "You got a little chow or something?" And that's when he says like, "Hey, Paul," and he goes to swing it. Now, when he swung the axe,
no, Alan,
there were actually, so he swung the axe, I think at like plexiglass. Mm-hmm. And when he swings the ass, when he swings the ass,
when he swings that ass around.
When he swings the axe, there were crew members that were like just spritzing blood up at him to get it covered. And of course we have "It's hip to be square" like going around in the background. But they
try getting a reservation at Dorsey's now, you motherfucker.
No, I think, what does he call him? I think he calls him a stupid fucking bastard or something.
Yeah, probably.
Try getting a reservation at Dorsey now. Which of course Dorsey is like their big, it's like a big point of contention. But he swung at the plexiglass, and it was funny. I think it was only an act. They wanted the blood to cover like all of him, but I think it's one of those weird, just kind of meant to be things. The blood only covers half of his face, which again, it's like, well, that's kind of a metaphor for, you know what I mean? It's like it only covers half his face.
That director was like,
he's pristine on one side, and then he's all bloody and gross on the other side.
That director was probably like, that works. Let's keep it in there.
Write that down. J-Did says, "Y'all done gone off your Star Trek, and now the Killers. I'm about to."
No, I didn't fuck up with the Star Trek. He did. I just had to fuck up with the 30 Seconds to Mars.
I always forget. To be fair, though, I always forget who. And then as soon as I hear 30 Seconds to Mars, I'm like, oh yeah. I kind of forget 30 Seconds to Mars exists. I'm not gonna lie. But even then, we get into the stuff with Willem Dafoe and the Donald Kimball, the private investigator. It's because we even see him like when he goes to when he gets to Jada says, "Coming out of my cage and I was doing just fine." But like we get the whole scene when he goes to Paul Allen's apartment and he's like, Paul's gonna take a trip. And he's putting his clothes in. He's trying to make it look like he's going to be gone. But the private investigator thing, like I said at the beginning of the show, they purposely did multiple takes with Willem Dafoe with the interview scenes when they're in his office, when they're when he says, "Let's go get lunch," and they're eating lunch. Like they purposely made in one take they would tell Willem Dafoe, "Hey, make it look like 100% for damn sure it's him." And then another shot, they'd be like, make it like he's not a suspect at all. You're just talking to him, trying to get information. And then another one kind of act like you're, like Green Goblin sitting at the table at Thanksgiving in Spider-Man, like kind of like is like suspicious, you know what I mean? And they cut that together, so when you see Willem Dafoe talking to him, even as an audience member, it almost kind of puts you on edge. That's another layer of suspense that they do really well, where it's like, does he know what's going on? Does he not know what's, you know what I mean? It's like, what's the deal here? So that's done really well. Let's talk about the whole the prostitute threesome thing, when he's still pretending to be Paul Allen, even in the threesome. Well, it's interesting
because that's the hardest part to watch.
It is the hardest part to watch, because it's kind of like you could look at it in a few different ways. You could look at it as he's trying to cover up. He's trying to make it look like Paul Allen is still just kind of not off the grid, but you know what I mean? Just kind of doing his thing. He's trying to make it look like he's still there. But there's also the side, like we talked about at the beginning of the show, where is that just his other personality coming out? You know what I mean? Because he's abusing these people. You think it's his other personality coming out?
Yeah, I think it is.
That's fair.
Because it's not like he used like the stuff that he did to try to cover up his tracks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like whenever Willem Dafoe would ask him about these things, about Paul Allen's disappearance, he was always like, well, I mean, I'm sure Paul Allen was home at one point and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So like, yeah, who knows? So I think that was just him, like, embodying the fucking Paul Allen pretty much.
Yeah.
And that's what made it so like fucking odd and scary at the same time. And if I'm being honest, man, like like it was two times where it happened. 2 times. And you almost feel so bad for Christy. It's like, doll, you chose
you do.
What
that's what I was saying about the
where like
you
ended up
feel
like
terrible for him.
Mm-hmm.
You feel awful for him the entire time. And that's another way that they kind of put the whole violence against women, that whole thing as well. But even the scene, when he's in Paul Allen's apartment and when he leaves the, when he says about he's going to London or whatever, and he's trying to make it look like whatever, and he says, hasta la vista, baby. That whole thing.
Yeah.
Jaded says the hooker scene was done perfect. You didn't hardly see anything in your mind. Imagine the worst. Yeah. Well, Miguel, you had mentioned Christy. She in a way, Christy and the what's his secretary's name? Christy and is it Courtney? Is that the secretary? I'm on IMDb. I'm trying to.
I think it's Courtney. Yeah.
Christy is the prostitute. Christy's the prostitute, but who is the Jean? That's his secretary. So honestly, it is.
Holy shit, she does not look the same.
I kind of asked you about this in our commentary too. Brain fart on who the actors were. But when he asked the secretary to dinner, and first of all, even the thing with her, he treats her like garbage anyways. Like seeing when he when he says about like wear a dress next time or whatever, and he's trying to get her to change clothes, and we get the whole scene where she's in the apartment. What was your take on Jean being in the apartment with him when he looks like he's going to kill her, and he actually takes the nail gun and puts it up to her head, and then he says, "You better leave or something really bad is going to happen"? Do you think he was trying to do the right thing in that moment because he didn't want to kill her? Or what's your take on that whole scene and that whole sequence?
I'm not entirely sure, if I'm being honest, because usually it was like, at first I thought it was like just she was just too innocent or something like that. But at the same time, it was like, well, why didn't she kill Sabrina, honestly? And I don't know. I think at that moment in that movie, what I think possibly what could have happened was that Patrick Bateman, I think, was still like going through something else, I guess.
Yeah.
And he was way too he couldn't find the right way to do it. It wasn't the fact
Right.
that he didn't want to kill her. He wanted to kill her. It's just he couldn't find the perfect way to do it. And I think that's why he did. I think that's why. And I think the reason why he also didn't was the fact that there was a here it is. Patrick Bateman was trying to play some sort of character in front of Sabrina so that she can think of some other different type, so she can have some different idea of Patrick Bateman. But whenever what's her name, I guess, like called him out of the blue and was like saying
Evelyn.
like, yeah, when Evelyn called and Patrick Bateman, it was basically saying Patrick Bateman's character at that very moment was torn to shreds.
It was interrupted.
It was interrupted. So
Yeah.
therefore Patrick Bateman didn't have the perfect way to like offer. So he had to dump it. So I think that's
Right.
why. He was no longer in control of that situation. Sabrina probably thought, because he loved the fact that Sabrina was like into him, and he was like getting off on that notion. But the second Evelyn called and Sabrina was like, well, he's obviously with someone, so I don't want to be with him.
Right.
At that point, Patrick Bateman lost control of that situation. He was like, well, I don't want to do anything now because I'm not in control.
I agree with you, and I think it's Jada says it was his one brief moment of humanity, and I kind of agree with that. I think, well, to an extent, I think it's a combination of things. I think in that moment he was having a fantasy. He clearly opened his cabinet and saw all of the torture tools and the weapons and whatever else in there, and I think he had all intentions of killing her because he literally puts the nail gun right up against her head. But I think it's a combination of the phone call ruined that. The phone call completely broke whatever character he was at that moment, even if the character was Patrick Bateman, because he wasn't necessarily trying to be anybody else because she knew who he was, because she was his secretary. But I think it's interesting that it broke his concentration when Evelyn called, and I do think it was a combination. He did have a little moment of humanity because he recognizes how innocent Jean is. And I think he recognizes that if you stay here, something really bad is going to happen. And that's when she leaves. And I think that's kind of cool. Kind of the antithesis of what happens with the other two hookers. When he takes Christy there, and unfortunately Christy, when she gets away, she runs, she sees all the corpses, and he's naked with the chainsaw when he drops it down the staircase. Like, it's kind of the antithesis of that, I mean, you could almost, I think the spiral in the rest of the movie when he's running with the chainsaw, it's a combination of he's starting to realize what's going on in his head, how crazy he is. Plus, it's the investigation is starting to, take a turn because you kind of get the sense that Willem Dafoe is starting to put things together a little bit more. I think it's a combination of a lot of things on why he didn't kill Jean, on why he went off with the hookers in the room with the chainsaw and popping the pills. I think there's a lot kind of that goes on at the beginning of that, or in that part of the film.
I think, well, now that you explained much of it, I think it's probably to the fact that like Patrick Bateman didn't have any way of justifying killing Jean at that moment. There is literally no other reason of killing her because, like you said, you notice how like everyone else in the movie, all of the victims are are like self-centered and like literally have just not their kind of mentality. Like they're all like disassociated, but still in it. and like they don't care about anything else other than themselves. They're so self-centered and everything. So
Yeah.
Patrick Bateman just like, well, these people can just go off. They can just die for all I care.
Right.
Because they
They're
have
expendable.
they're expendable. But when it came to Gene and seeing how much moral Gene had for not really wanting to quote unquote having an affair or cheating with Patrick Bateman, I think Patrick realizes that wow, she actually has some morals. Like there's actually people out here that actually have some good intentions in this world. So he was like, why would I want to remove that from this earth when there's so many other self-centered people that could just be expendable? So
yeah, I agree with that. One of the most interesting, really the last like third of the film, or from the part where he starts to spiral, I think is very interesting. Like, because of course we get the feed me the stray cat thing when he's at the ATM and he goes to shoot the cat and shove it into the ATM. And then he shoots the old lady. That whole sequence is kind of wild.
I think that one was full on dream.
It was. I agree. But that's where it's almost like, what the hell is going on? The police car, the police car's blowing up, and he runs through the World Trade Center and he shoots the person at the front desk. When he calls and he tells the lawyer, that he's killed 40 people and whatever.
I ate the brains. I was like, what?
Yeah. He really starts to spiral when he goes to the payphone. And he pops back like the entire bottle of pills. His spiral and kind of seeing him spiral is really interesting. The whole phone call to the lawyer about, he, like I just said, he's killed the 40 people, and his confession, which I guess it turns out wasn't really a confession. It's interesting that he goes to confess, because that's another thing again where it's like, okay, is there a little shimmer of humanity in there that he doesn't want to keep doing it? He recognizes this is really bad. You know what I mean? But then again, a lot of it was in his head. I mean, I agree with you that whole sequence is in his head. It's very fantastical compared to the rest of the movie, And then even the end of the film, again, is up for interpretation. And by the way, if you're still watching with us, leave this video a like, this episode, and let us know, what is your take on the ending? Do you think all of this was in his head? Because when we get to the final scene where he's with the dudes, when he's in, he goes and he gets himself cleaned up or whatever. He slicks his hair back, and he goes to he's meeting with the guys, and they're trying to figure out where they're going to go for dinner. And again, they're material bull crap. Like, they're trying to figure out where they're going to get a reservation. And he sees Carnes, who is his lawyer, and he's like, "Did you see my message?" And he's going crazy or whatever. And the guy laughs it off, and he's like, what? Like, he's kind of in shock. He's like, I killed people. Like, what do you mean? Like, what are you talking about? And that's when we start to get, it's like you step back.
Why is it not possible, you stupid bastard? There's something like that. It's like, it's not possible.
As an audience member, you step back and you're like, what? Like, was all of that? Was any of that real? Was some of that real? Was all of that fake? Like, is this all in his brain? It's very interesting. Like, his whole spiral is interesting because he's so confident and he's so whatever. But that moment with Gene in the apartment is kind of the point where he starts to spiral a little bit, and you start to see little glimpses of maybe there's a little bit of humanity in there.
But you also got to understand that Patrick Bateman, that he is a narrator, and I guess you could label him as like the unreliable narrator. He is an unreliable narrator.
Yeah,
like he only speaks from his point of view and his objective reality, whether it's split or into like 12 different places. Like, so it's kind of hard to like you need to take it. You need to take that in fact when you watch this movie. Like, he could narrate everything to you, but it could all still be a lie.
Yep, 100%, and it's part of what makes this thing so interesting. My take, it's interesting that you see on the door. I'm not sure exactly how the novel plays it out, but on the door, it says something like, "This is not an exit." And I believe the final line of the novel of American
Yeah.
Psycho is, "This is not an exit." And my take on that is, it's almost like, if he's gonna, because these people can just run away from any problem. He's been running away from, like you taught, this is kind of coming full circle. Like you said at the beginning of the show, where he's trying to fill that void, and he fills it with killing all these people and these like murderous psychopathic tendencies that he has. And he can run from all of that, but he's to a point where he's realized that it's wrong. He's realized that he can't even trust his own head anymore. So even if he was to go out that door, it says this is not an exit. It's like, there's no way to exit this anymore. Running away is not an exit anymore. You almost have to face this and face the fact that, is this real? Is this made up? It's very poetic. It's a very interesting way to end the film. Just the close up on his face and kind of this mental battle of, did any of this happen? Did some of this happen? Which is originally what Brett Ellis was so worried about. He felt like this is not going to make a good film because it's not going to make any sense,
But contrary to his belief, it's a decent film.
It is. It's a very good film. Data says, I think it was all his thoughts during a mental break he had. He's probably probably had a similar break many times in the past, with each one being more fantastical than the last. That's an interesting thought too. The idea that the whole entire thing was just all in his head. That it's very interesting. Got a 69% on Rotten Tomatoes, 85% audience score. The New York Times called it a mean and lean horror classic. The LA Times said the difficult truth is that the more viewers can model themselves after protagonist Bateman, the more they can distance themselves from the human reality of the slick violence that fills the screen and takes it all as some kind of a cool joke. The more they are likely to enjoy this stillborn, pointless piece of work. I wouldn't say that at all. Newsweek says, but after an hour of dissecting the 80s culture of materialism, narcissism, and greed, the movie begins to repeat itself. It becomes more grisly and surreal, but not more interesting. I don't agree with that. I think you really have to
you also got to realize those articles were probably made like a month or so after, or like even a week or even a day after the movie was released. So like, no one has really like done case studies or like really delved into the movie out of itself. So like, you almost can't read those articles because they don't really have like the full picture. Again, those articles are from a unreliable narrator because they're coming from their own perspective. There's absolutely zero sense of like non-bias statements that's going to be in that article.
Paul Allen wrote those articles.
Yeah, right. Or Marcus or Davis.
I know, right?
Yeah, so
it's interesting. Again, I think with this one, you almost have to kind of take it all with a grain of salt. I think to find the social commentary, to find what it's trying to say, you really have to take it with a grain of salt. And I know it seems very extreme. I've told my wife this. We've talked about this. I know listen, I know it's a very extreme film. But I think the fact that it's so extreme is what makes it great. And there is a lot to be said about it. And about what it has to say. So this is definitely a fun one, man. Jaded says, this was the Joker. Yes, this was the Joker movie of its time. A brilliant look into mental health and society as a whole. 100%. I would definitely agree with that. I mean, there's honestly, now that I think about it, there's a lot of parallels between this and Joker.
Yeah, I can say that. Yeah. Even how the movie ends.
Yeah. Miguel, final thoughts on American Psycho before we wrap this bad boy up.
Yeah, guys, it's just a case study. If you get past all of the shit and gruesome things that happens in that movie and you take it as like a case study for like, the psyche of a man that is so far gone in the whole superficial world, it's a really interesting movie to see like how grounded in reality are these people that are so far up in the 1%er lifestyle that they just are no longer in reality. They're outside of reality and whatnot. And the commentary in there is absolutely spectacular, is written really well, and everything in this movie is honestly like so well written to the point where even to this day, the interpretations of this movie still varies from time to time, from posters to posters, from like audience members. Like the interpretation of this movie can be like 12 different things, just like Patrick Bateman's personality. So yeah,
Yeah.
From that standpoint, if I had to rate this movie, I would probably give it about like an 8.7. You know, decently up there. You know, it's high up there in regards to like all the
I would agree.
horror movies that I've seen so far. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a good one, man. Thank you guys so much for joining us. An hour and 45 minutes in. If you haven't already, be sure to leave this video a like. I know some people are already peacing. Guys, we love you. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. We will be back in episode number 15? Episode 15 of Purely. It's hard to believe that we're only at 15, but we really deep dive into these, which is part of the reason it's so fun. Because it's deep, and we spend like a lot, like even though it might seem like a lot of time in between episodes of this show, we take that time to prep and to do our commentary and to watch it and go through and make sure we're kind of like doing our homework and researching these. So these are a lot of fun to do. For episode 15, we will be back for Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors. We'll be back for Dream Warriors. So that's going to be a fun one. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. That's going to do it for Miguel and I on episode number 14 of Purely and Simply Evil. We love you guys so much. You guys are amazing. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at We Talk the Movies. New episodes of Let's Talk Movies and Purely and Simply Evil premiere every single Tuesday and Saturday at 8 p.m. and 10 a.m. Eastern. And we will talk to you soon. Have an awesome rest of your weekend. Happy Father's Day, everybody. Peace.
Peace.
Listen to Huey Lewis in the news.
And get a reservation at Dorsia.
Dorsia!